I'm the asshole for wanting my partner to use the bathroom. This is the stupidest debate we have ever had by far. My partner went out our front door to smoke a cigarette a couple evenings ago and requested I come outside as well. Our home, which we rent, is half of a double shotgun that sits maybe 10 feet or just over 3 meters to our neighbor on one side, and our porch is less than 50 feet or 15 meters from the neighbor across the street. He proceeds to go around the corner of our house and pee outside, right within the gate that is right up to our neighbor's house and right behind our front porch, within a 6-foot privacy fence, so no visibility to anyone, but it was still quite obvious what he was doing. It was maybe 7 p.m., so dark outside, but not late. The gate was shut, private yard. No one was going to walk in. I don't care. It still is unnecessary. My opinion is that it's kind of gross. The bathroom is inside, maybe 15 feet away. There's no plumbing issues. We aren't having issues with our water bill. It's clean. That's where adults go when they have to pee. I find it embarrassing if anyone were to hear or see that an adult man chose to urinate in the side yard, private or not, rather than go to the bathroom. He says men just do that. It's normal. Why go inside if you can just pee right there? No one can see anything. He says I'm being ridiculous. Okay, if you're drunk and it's 2 a.m. and you are taking the dogs out and it's a fenced backyard, I have no issues with it. Still seems silly when indoor plumbing exists, but whatever. Sometimes it's nice to not blind yourself by the bathroom lights in the middle of the night, but to just make a habit out of urinating outside is a bridge too far for me. We live in a major city with close neighbors, and while water issues are not uncommon, we don't have any. This is the stupidest, most petty debate. He says it's normal. I say it's fucking weird and gross. Hey, maybe we're both right, but am I the asshole?
My boyfriend's ex-girlfriend told him that she loved him at his birthday party. Yes, this did actually happen to me. Story time. So at the time, me and my boyfriend had been together for like 9 months or so. My boyfriend Steve had a friend called Amy. Amy and Steve worked together, and over the summer they had a little summer fling. I don't actually know the reason for them stopping seeing each other. They still had to consistently see each other every day at work. So when it came time for Steve's birthday, he invited the whole of the office. And he didn't think that she'd actually come, knowing that I was going to be there. Little did I know. So this is actually when I used to drink. So I was a little bit merry, shall we say. So the party gets underway. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to be the bigger person here and I'm going to go over and introduce myself. I don't want it to be awkward for the rest of the night. Me and my friends go over to Amy and her friend, who we'll call Stacey. And they are cold. I thought, babe, if anyone has a reason to be cold in here, it's me. So the night goes on, we're all having a boogie, having a dance. And I won't lie, even though I was keeping my distance from Amy, I was keeping an eye on her. And whilst I'm on the dance floor, I completely lose where Amy's gone. And this was maybe like 10:30, 11 o'clock. I head into the toilets, because, you know, girls got to do what a girl's got to do. And in there is Amy, Stacey, and my friends all in the girlies' toilets. As soon as I walked in, dead silence. Everyone stopped talking. Then Amy bursts into tears and runs out, pushes past me and runs out the room. And that is when my friends and her friends ran after her. But why are my friends going? You're supposed to stay with me. And then I go out and I'm thinking, yeah, let's go dance with my boyfriend. Can I find my boyfriend? No. I'm down a bit, people are packing up. We couldn't find Steve for like half an hour, 40 minutes. Oh God, look, I'm allergic to the bullshit. Just resigned to the fact that I'll probably just end up meeting him at home, grab my coat and I go stand outside. That is where I find Amy and Stacey. All shivery and cold and she's crying still and I'm like, girl, get it together. It's a party. Anyway, I said, hey girl, you okay? I give this girl the coat off my own back. Steve comes running outside and he's like, and walks back inside. Okay, it's home time. Everyone's getting in taxis and I watch Amy get in her cab. I watch her get in, watch her put her seatbelt on, watch her close the door, watch her drive away. What else drove away? My coat. The girl drove away wearing my coat. I then get home. Steve pulls me for a chat. Violent things. He says to me, what did Amy say to you? Did she say anything nasty to you? Was she hurtful to you? And I'm like, nope, she did just steal my coat though. And he says, okay, I need to tell you something. And I'm like, okay, I'm all ears. He proceeds to tell me that Amy had actually professed her love for him and said that she still wanted to be with him. She said that she'd never lost feelings, and seeing her with me made her realise that he was actually the one for her. I'm so glad I could assist in that revelation. He was like, Amy, listen, not to be brutal or anything, you kind of had your chance. And unfortunately, I found someone a lot better than you in every single way. I never actually got my coat back either.
Story time about how I was married to a serial killer. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. I'm going to do this over several parts, but first let's just talk about how we met. Okay, so I was friends with this girl in the 6th grade, and we wound up living 3 doors down from each other. So we got to be really close, and I'd go over to her house after school a lot. And her brother was in the Navy, and so he wasn't around that much, and he was a lot older than I was, but he was in the Navy, and he would come home on leave. And that's how I got to know him, and I kind of had a crush on him. He was her older brother and everything. When I was about 16, he started flirting with me and decided to ask me out. And honestly, that probably sounds like a really red flag, but my family, their biggest red flag was just the fact that he was a lot older than me, but they felt kind of comfortable because they already knew the family and they could see how much we liked each other, so they supported it. Things moved really quickly, and before I knew it, he asked me to marry him. And honestly, that sounds crazy, except that my life was like really chaotic at the time. So when he asked me to marry him, I just jumped on it because it was like really the best thing I had going for me. So to answer a few of your guys' questions from my last video, yes, this is a true story about my life. And you guys definitely did your research. My ex-husband was Richard Ivanitz. I have written a book, and I'm looking for a publisher and agent.
Things that my ex-best friend would do, but it gets worse with each one. Every time I would have braids and somebody would compliment me on them and be like, oh, your braids are so cute, she would make sure to tell them, oh, but that's not her real hair. That's plastic hair. That's horse hair. Like, she would do that every single time. She could never stand it when I would get compliments from people. Like, for example, there was this one time where she sent a snap of me and her to her friend, and her friend responded saying like, oh, your friend is really pretty. And I thought that was really sweet. But then she proceeded to send a snap back, but instead of sending a normal snap, she put her phone in my face like this up close to find like an ugly angle. And she was like, no, but she's not pretty in real life. She's not pretty in real life. And I was like, girl, what the fuck? And every time I would confront her on these things, she would just be like, oh, it's just a joke. You're so sensitive. I'm just joking. Relax. But like, why would you do that? And like so many times she would just take pictures of me and make them like purposely ugly. Like, she would always take like those 0.5 pictures of my forehead or like double chin pictures and always try to take ugly pictures of me. Every time we would work on a school project together, she would always lie to get out of it. Like, we would always be paired in a group together, and every time we would have to do the work and split it 50-50, she would find excuses to not do it. She would always just find the weirdest reasons. So I would always have to do the projects by myself. And I knew she was lying. Like, it was such obvious lies, but she would never admit to it. There was this one time in school where we accidentally both broke something, and we basically had to confess to breaking it. So I told my mom that I broke that with her on accident, and my mom told the teachers just to inform them. And when the teachers confronted us about it, just being like, oh, did you break that? I was like, yeah, we broke it on accident, sorry. And she just started crying and saying that I'm lying, and basically was like, oh no, she did it on her own, I didn't do anything. And just because she was crying, everybody believed her. So then she turned like all the teachers and her parents against me, and they all thought I was trying to frame her, even though we both did it together. Like, she never admitted to doing it, and her parents hated me from that point on. And after she did all that, we were still friends. That was in elementary school, by the way. And her parents hated me. They hated me just because of that. And sometimes she would just tell me how her dad said he's gonna beat me up for it. Like, mind you, I was a child, and her dad threatened to fight me. This one time, her mom came into school and basically just yelled at me and said that I shouldn't be her friend because I'm a bad influence, even though I didn't do anything. Then in middle school, there was this one guy in my class, and he was like a huge racist, basically. He would always say the most racist stuff to me, and like, nobody ever really did anything. And mind you, she knew that he was doing all of that and how racist he was. After a while, I found out that she started talking to him, and they had like a thing. And I'm like, girl, she was my best friend, and she knew how he treated me and how racist he was, and she ended up getting with him. Like, excuse me. Another thing was, every time I would have a crush on a guy and I would tell her, she would start texting them. Either she would start texting them or she would follow them on Instagram or something like that. And she would all of a sudden have a crush on them too. Out of nowhere. So at some point when I had a crush on someone, I would just stop telling her because I knew that she would somehow try to get closer to them. I don't know why. Anytime I would get a compliment on like a shirt or a dress or whatever I was wearing, after a while, she would come back with the same things. Like, for example, if somebody said, oh, I really like your jacket, she would buy that same jacket and wear it a week after. And every time I'd be like, oh, like, I didn't know you had that. She would be like, oh, no, I had it before you. I bought it before you. You copied me. Like, bitch. So yeah, at some point, I got really fed up with being her friend. So I just started hanging out with other people. And when I basically stopped hanging out with her and started hanging out with other people, she tried to bully me. Like, this girl was crazy. Every time I would be sick and stay home from school, she would go up to the teachers and tell them that I'm skipping school, which I never did, first of all. And I would only find that out from my other friends who were in school at that time. Every time I was in class just minding my own business and, for example, saying something to participate, she would make like negative comments in class and just try and make fun of me. So yeah, after a week of her doing that, I came up to her and I was like, girl, like, I've been noticing that you keep doing this, this, and this. Can you stop? Because it's really fucking annoying, right? So she was like, yeah, okay, I guess I'm going to stop. And then we had class. And then after we got out of that class and I was going to go home, she called my name and she comes up to me and she's like, oh, remember what we talked about earlier? And I was like, yeah. She was like, yeah, basically, I changed my mind. I'm not going to stop. Like, she was like, I'm not going to stop. Because you deserve it. And I'm like, excuse me? The audacity. She just came up to me and was like, that I deserve that. For what? Bitch, I didn't do anything to you. And then she just turned around and she walked off, still feeling herself. And I was literally baffled. I did not know what to say. I was like, what the fuck? At some point, I had to report her. She just didn't want to stop. Of course, she told the teachers that she didn't do anything. And people believed her. So yeah, that was it. Obviously, we're not friends anymore. And we're not in contact at all. I think I already said this in the last part, but she would always take ugly pictures of me. And then every year on my birthday, she would post those ugly pictures on Instagram for everyone to see. Even though she knew that I didn't want her having those pictures, and especially posting them. And when I asked her to take them down, she refused. And she would call me oversensitive for not being able to take a joke. This one time we were sitting in class, and I was basically concentrating on a paper. And just as a joke, when I wasn't paying attention, she took her scissors and cut the bottom piece of my braid off. So obviously I got really angry because why on earth would you do that? And she said that I was overreacting because it's fake hair anyways. And when I was obviously still mad after that, because what? She ignored me for the rest of the day. Every time we would go to a party where only she knew people, and I would try to socialize because she was hanging out with other people, she would get mad at me because she thought I was stealing her friends. Every time I would have a crush on a guy, she would have a crush on them too all of a sudden. And she would try to claim them for herself that way. And she would say that she had a crush on them before me, so I can't try anything with them. At some point, we were in a friend group with one other girl. And after a while, I found out that they had a group chat without me, where they would always talk shit about me. And it was mostly my best friend who started it. This other time, she told me that she knows a guy that she thought I would really like. And I was surprised because every time I would like a guy, she would try to take them from me. And she told me that I should message him online. So I texted with him for like a little while, but it seemed really weird, right? Like something about it was just really off. And it turns out that she was behind that Instagram account. She was texting me, pretending to be a guy. When I tell you that this girl was batshit crazy, and every time I would confront her, she would be like, oh, it was just a prank, it was just a joke. What was she trying to do? Every time I would sleep at her house, she wouldn't let me sleep in her bed, and I would have to sleep on the floor. Because she didn't want to share her bed. She didn't want to share anything. And sometimes when we got into fights because of it, she would kick me out of her bedroom in the middle of the night. And her weird-ass parents never really did anything. As I already said in the other video, her dad one time threatened to beat me up. Every time we were hanging out with other people, she would try to embarrass me in front of them and make up stuff that wasn't even true for laughs. And she would do that especially if guys were around. She always wanted to look good in front of them, so she would put me down so she would look better. There was this one time I had a crush on a guy. As I already said, every time I had a crush on a guy, she had a crush on that guy too. But at that time, she had a boyfriend. So I thought I was safe. But no. So basically, we were at a friend's birthday. And he was there too. So I randomly started talking to him. And when she noticed that, she ignored me throughout the whole party. And when I asked her what her problem was, she said that I'm trying to steal her crush. And I was like, your crush? Girl, you have a boyfriend. And then she said that she has better chances with him anyways because she's white. Excuse me, bitch.
No one but my mother and I know that almost every meal I make for her is revenge. I have never told anyone this, not even my husband, but it happened again tonight, and I'm feeling a bit giddy because of how well it worked yet again. So I want to brag. I'm aware that I'm a piece of shit. Part of why I haven't told anyone. When I was little, my mother wanted to use corporal punishment on me. Not my siblings, never my siblings, but because I was such a bad kid, she wanted my dad to hit me. My dad flat out refused and told her that if she did, he wouldn't be able to stay with her because he didn't want anyone hitting his kids. My dad was abused pretty bad as a kid. Whole other story. Can't get into it too much or we'd be here all day. So instead, whenever my mom was mad at me, she would give me spicy food to eat, even though I hated it and it made me sick. Like full-on stomach cramps, diarrhea, the effing works. She would only do it when my dad was at work, which was most nights at dinner. And whenever I asked for something else to eat, she would break down and cry over how much time she spent on my food. And don't I love her? Guilting me into hurting myself. Well, when I turned 16, I was meant to start taking over more of the chores in the house, including cooking dinner twice a week. My mother hates pasta. She hates it. It's a texture thing, and she claims it's always slimy. One brilliant night at 16, after my father began working morning shifts, I was mad at her for screaming at me earlier in the day, and I realized that I could do something about it. Since that night, one of the only meals I have cooked for my mother is pasta. I load it with sauce and sometimes make things like baked spaghetti because she hates the way the top of it looks. Whenever she's tried to turn it down, I put on the waterworks and shake and look at the table. You've always eaten it before. What did I do wrong? Are you mad at me, Mom? And because either my dad or my husband or other people whose opinions she cares about are there, she's never called me out. I'm 26 years old and I intend to do this for every meal we share, or until she cuts me off. I'm not going to be seen as the bad guy here for not keeping the family together. I honestly don't care if this makes me a bad guy. She sucked, and this is my pettiest form of revenge. Watching her try to keep a straight face while choking down chicken Alfredo is the highlight of my week this week.
Am I in the wrong for flipping out on my mother-in-law and husband for eating all the food before I had eaten? Ever since I gave birth 4 months ago, so I have 4 kids total, my mother-in-law has been showing up whenever she wants, and whenever she's here, she always helps herself to whatever she wants. She has never offered to help me or the baby in any way, shape, or form. She's basically here to see her son, and that's it. Like, about 3 weeks ago, I made a small pot of coffee, enough for 2 cups. I want to go nurse the baby while waiting, and at some point my mother-in-law shows up and lets herself inside. When I came out, she had drank the entire pot. I had no coffee grounds left. Or she's eaten my leftovers straight out of the fridge multiple times. And she's always like, thanks for the food, coffee, as if I offered it to her when I absolutely didn't because all she's doing is making my life miserable. I told my husband to speak to her about it and he told me that he did, and I truly don't think so. I spoke up last time when she was here, 3 weeks ago, and told her that she needed to stop helping herself because she's eating and drinking stuff that I wanted and or made for myself. She said, oh, I'm sorry, and then stopped coming around for a while. Well, today I made 4 homemade pizzas. I told the kids to come help themselves to dinner and that I had to go get the baby down for a nap real quick and we'd be right back. Well, it took me 45 minutes because the baby is fussy. She just had shots. I come back and all of the pizza was gone and my mother-in-law and husband are sitting there chowing away. I just said, are you effing kidding me right now? My husband asked what was going on and I said, you guys couldn't have even left me an effing slice? Sure, let's feed the effing neighborhood before I even go to eat. That's so awesome of you guys. Thanks. And start to walk off. My oldest son, 13, comes in and he's like, Mom, I left you out a plate. I put it right on the counter, and walks over to grab it, and lo and behold, that's gone too. Mother-in-law said, I thought it was left over from dinner. So my son's apologizing to me even though he did nothing wrong, and my mother-in-law and husband just stand there. They literally aren't saying anything. So I looked at both of them and said, you both need to leave now. My husband then decides to speak, saying it was an honest mistake and that no one meant any harm, and said I was making a mound out of a molehill, which honestly just pissed me off further. So I snapped again and said, yeah, except every time your effing mother comes here, I end up going without because she eats or drinks my portion of everything. But sure, let's defend someone taking food out of my mouth, shall we? His mother just storms out of the house and my husband looks at me like I'm insane. So I say, quick, chase her, and walk out. My husband thinks that I'm effing mental and that this all could have been resolved if I had acted like an adult. He won't come home, but at this point, I don't even want him to come home because it means his mother will stay away. So, am I in the wrong?
I just had the craziest, most karmic thing happen to me. So I'm going to tell you a quick story about my mother for preface. Growing up, me and my mom and my sister, we were a little bit broke, right? My mom was a single mom. She had 2 kids by 2 separate baby daddies. So, you know, she was just trying to like make it work, right? Like make it work. Like she was going in the mornings to have to go waitress for like a little diner and then leaving and going straight to hair school or vice versa, really hustling her ass off to be able to support us because she didn't even have a GED. My mom didn't graduate past 8th grade. We were struggling, right? We had an era of struggling. We lived in government subsidized housing. We just had a crazy fucking life. Anyways, my mom in my early teens, mid-teens, really got her bootstraps up, baby, and she hustled her way into having her own salon. And at one point, by a friend, she was gifted this kind of like older Mercedes-Benz. Not even older. It was probably like an 8-year-old Mercedes-Benz. I remember there was one day I was sitting in her Benz outside of her salon and I was just thinking about how far our family had come, how insanely, incredibly karmic it felt to be sitting in my mom's Benz, which my mom had formerly literally had a minivan that had its windows shot out because anyway, the reason that her windows got shot out is a story for another time. Anyways, and then I was sitting in front of her salon with her name on it and she had done that for us. You know, it was karmic. So I posted a picture of it and I just said, so proud of my mom. I can't believe how far we've come. And then the next day I was going to a party. The next day I was going to a party and honestly the school I went to was really well known for just like being awful. Like kids were pretty cliquey. It was just kind of an awful school in terms of like cliques and bullying. And like looking back, like no one really thought of that way, but like as an adult now I look at it and I'm like, wow, like people were terrible to each other. I had like an entire Twitter account made towards like just disliking me, which was insane. Bitches always have wanted to be me. I don't know. Anyways, I have my mom drop me off at this party and my friends that like, there was always like this frenemy vibe. It felt like I always felt different than them. These people always had just like a lot of money, a lot of fucking privilege. Like they just didn't get the life I lived. So these friends are already at the party when I get there and my mom's dropping me off in the front, obviously at the front, and they're in the garage and they see her drop me off. And I go into the garage to like say hi to my friends and notice they had already been talking about. And you know that feeling when people are already talking about you and you're just like, oh, what the fuck? The energy's so weird. And I could tell it was clearly negative. So they're all giggling amongst each other and I'm standing there like silent, like uncomfortable. And then one of them finally up and said, oh yeah, your mom's Benz. Yeah, your mom's Benz is old as fuck. Yeah. Like they start like roasting me that I'm embarrassing basically for like posting my mom's Benz because it's so old and like I shouldn't even be proud of that. Like that's so broke of me. It was so embarrassing and humiliating. Like everyone I'd ever fucking met was in this garage and it was just embarrassing. And I remember I got picked up early that day because I just felt like, how dare you insult my mom's, like it was just insane. Anyways, I will always remember that because it was always such like a turning point for me in terms of like who I stayed friends with and when I really realized how different my life was from the people I grew up around. Anyways, I was just driving around in my new Benz that I've been able to provide for myself. And I passed by that same kid who told me how terrible my mom's Benz was and how embarrassing I was for being proud of her. And guess what he was driving? A hoopty. A goddamn hoopty. And no shame to him, I had a hoopty 6 months ago, but it's crazy when you watch people realize the realities of becoming an adult and understand that the privilege they had as a kid, they won't be graced with as an adult. And that for passing judgment, I mean, God really hits you tenfold, baby. You'll always reap what you sow. I swear to God, you always will. So I guess, I don't know, it was just karmic. It was like, I'm not judging you right now, but I am thinking to myself, how ironic that you judged me and then adulthood hit you and you realized, I hope that you've realized that was rude and that was awful. And adulthood and being a parent and being a single parent is fucking hard and my mom deserved to be proud of that and I deserve to be proud of her. And I'm proud of my fucking self. So...
This is why I don't date people with kids, and this is probably my first and last time dating someone with kids. Alright, so I've been on my Bumble era lately, and I really don't use Bumble like that, but I've been on my Bumble era, and this is where I met this girl. I know you guys want to know about the airport girl. There's not much to report. We're still talking, we're still texting. Everything is still good, but in between, I'm still going on dates. If you want to know that story, don't know what I'm talking about, it's in my profile. Anyways, I meet this girl on Bumble. She hits me up, and she says, hey, it's probably like at this point like 10 o'clock at night. We get to talking, we get to texting, and everything's good. The bench is good, conversation going back and forth. As me personally, I can't be a simple guy and say stupid shit and simple shit. I'm gonna go out with a fucking bang. I always have my favorite one-liners to go to, and it's nothing that's like original. It's always something that I've made up in my fucking head. Anyways, we're having great conversation. She ends up saying, hey, what's your number? I give her my number. We started texting a little bit, and I said, hey, you mind if I call you? I don't know about you, but I like to call. It's better for me. She says, absolutely. We talk on the phone. The chemistry's great. Everything's I don't know. Everything is just going smooth. And to be honest, she was attractive, but what made me more attracted to her, she had a nice smile. I don't know what it is about a smile for me, but if you have a nice smile, that'll sell me 10 out of 10. We end up talking. I said, hey, how about you let me take you out tomorrow? Fuck it. Let's run it. She agrees to it. She was like, yeah, let's go out. Let's see what's what. She gives me some recommendations. She's like, we should maybe go here, 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 here. Okay, bet. Fuck it. I like it. The day comes to go on the date. She texts me. She said, hey, I'm about to leave my house. The sitter just got here. The sitter? I didn't know she had kids. I guess we hadn't talked about that. Maybe that's one thing people bring up or have in their profile, but she has kids. I usually don't date people that have kids only because it's easier for my lifestyle and the lifestyle that I fucking live. I have nothing against people that have kids whatsoever. I just prefer not to date people with kids. I think we all have our preferences. I had already set this date up, so at this point I'm just like, fuck it, let's just run with it. I get to the date, she's looking fucking stunning. Like, fucking stunning. And I'm telling you, this girl probably has the nicest smile that I've fucking seen. I get there, you know, we compliment each other, blah, 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 this, that, and the third. And she tells me, she was like, yo, she asked me how tall I was over the phone. And I was just like, I say my favorite line, 5'11", with confidence like I'm 6'4". They always love that line. And she was like, oh, I thought you were maybe taller than 5'11". I love that. My ex always bitched about, oh, fuck, you're like 5'11", blah, 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 this, that, and the third. Like, nothing I could ever do for my ex was good enough, and that's why she's a fucking ex. She ended up Ubering there only because if she drank, she didn't want to, you know, mix drinking and driving and all that shit. Responsible, the date is going well. She's well-spoken, seems pretty nice, seems like a genuine person. The day ends, she tells me, hey, do you want to come over? The kid's already asleep. Do you want to come over and just lay by the pool? They had a fucking nice ass pool. Fuck it, let's run it. I'm down. We get to the house. It's a nice house, like a fucking nice ass house. To the point I'm like, what the fuck do you do for work? I'm telling you, I get to the house. The house is one of the nicest houses that I've seen, with the pool, a hot tub, the whole nine. And she did tell me that she was divorced. The kids are asleep. We're hanging out, sitting by the pool. They had a sitter and all this shit, and the sitter ended up leaving. We end up hanging by the pool, having a good time. Tell me, not even 20 minutes, a man comes into the backyard and is like, hey, can I talk to you? And he tells me, he's like, hey, I'm sorry, but I need to have a conversation with her. At this point, I'm looking at her like, who the fuck is this dude? Come to find out, that's her ex-husband. He's mad because she invited me over. They're not together, and he has a kid with someone else, and he lives somewhere else, but he has access to the Ring camera and saw me on there and all types of shit. And he's saying he doesn't want to have people around his kids and blah, 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 and this, that, and the third. She ends up telling me all this shit. He was nice about it to me. He didn't really, like, say much to me. He was just like, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. Like, I need to have a conversation with her about my kids. Long story short, what this story is not short, I end up leaving because I was like, okay, y'all need to settle this between y'all. I don't want any part of this shit. And when people have kids, it just gets messy. Like, you gotta deal with a baby mama or baby daddy. Fuck that, I don't have time for that shit. If it ain't one thing, it's a motherfucking another.
Am I in the wrong for breaking up with my boyfriend because he ignored my medical emergency and didn't visit me in the hospital? I, 25 female, have been dating my boyfriend, 27 male, for 2 years. He's been my first ever boyfriend because not a lot of guys seem interested in me. Overall, our relationship has been good, but something happened recently that made me question everything. I started feeling severe abdominal pain while we were at his apartment. The pain became so intense that I could hardly move or speak. I told my boyfriend that I needed to go to the hospital because something felt very wrong. He dismissed my concerns, saying I was overreacting and that it was probably just something I ate. Despite my pleas, he refused to take me to the hospital or even call an ambulance. He suggested that I lie down and waited out. The pain kept getting worse and I was scared, throwing up and crying. After an hour of begging him to help me, I finally managed to call a friend who immediately came over and took me to the ER. It turns out that I had pancreatitis, which required immediate medical attention. The doctor said it could have been life-threatening if I had waited any longer. My friend stayed with me the entire time, but my boyfriend didn't even check in to see how I was doing until the next day. He sent a brief text saying that he hoped I was feeling better. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. He didn't even bother to come see me. When I confronted him about his lack of support and concern, he got defensive, saying I was being dramatic and that he didn't think it was that serious. He accused me of making him look bad in front of my friends for something that wasn't a big deal. I decided to break up with him because I can't be with someone who doesn't take my health seriously or support me in an emergency. Now, after we've been apart for a week, some of our mutual friends are saying that I overreacted and that he just made a mistake. They think I should give him another chance, that he was busy and it wasn't as big of a deal as I made it out to be. So, am I in the wrong?